Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tatami Room. I'm your host, Martin. This is episode 10, the Kagoshima Experience. This week, I went to Kagoshima City with a couple of my friends from back home in Washington, and we got to go around and explore Kagoshima City. And even though I've been to Kagoshima City quite a few times at this point, it's always been kind of a touch and go. I'll take the ferry into the port and then travel somewhere else. So I've never really had the chance to fully kind of do an immersive dive and really explore what Kagoshima City has to offer. So that's what I'll be talking about this week. The Stoic quote for today is, "If you accomplish something with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures." This quote is by Musonius Rufus. I found it quite interesting, and I hope you do too. I wanted to give you all a quick update before we jump into the daily life section. I told everyone that I would be going sober for the month of October, Sober October. I'm still going strong, sort of, after letting one of my friends know that I would be going sober. Later in the evening, they proceeded to hand me a drink, which I did not realize was alcoholic. I should have known, but I took a sip, and then later she was like, "Oh, wait, how much alcohol does this have again?" And I was like, "Oh, well, there goes there goes nothing, I suppose." But I guess I'm not gonna count that. Save for a sip. I've been dry and been pretty happy. So yeah, that's just kind of funny that I told my friend literally about an hour before that whole thing happened. I was like, "Hey, I'm kind of doing this challenge and whatnot," and then I think they forgot, and then I just didn't know that was an alcoholic beverage. So no harm, no foul. But with that out of the way, let's get into the daily life section. All right, welcome back, everyone. Let's get to the daily life section where I'll be talking about my time in Kagoshima City. We kind of hit up three big things while we were in Kagoshima, those being the hot springs, Sakurajima, and the aquarium. My favorite, I have to say, has to be the hot springs that we kind of squeezed in on the last day, which is Saturday. Funny enough, these hot springs are actually in Ibuski, which is a smaller town about an hour's drive south. But if you're a fan of onsen in general, I highly recommend the hot springs in Ibuski because they're incredibly unique. They're home to the world's one and only natural sand bath. And so what that means is you take all your clothes off, put on a yukata or some robes, and you kind of get into this sand pit. Some workers shovel some sand over you. Obviously not over your face, but the rest of your body. And basically, these sands are geothermally heated, and just staying inside them or just kind of laying down in them for about 10 minutes has been shown to have beneficial and positive health effects. And so it's been quite a popular tourist attraction, or just attraction in general, for some time now. And my friends and I, we thoroughly enjoyed it. I think if you're a fan of going to the onsen or hot springs in general, I highly recommend it. Personally, I've been liking going to onsen here in Japan, or hot springs. I don't know, I find the environment very calming and relaxing. The way that a normal onsen would work is you'd go in without any clothes on. First, you take a shower. You kind of clean yourself before getting into this pool that has kind of geothermally heated water that comes out of the earth. Some depends on the onsen that you go to, but some have water that they store and then reheat or heat even more, and some have kind of pools that have the water as it comes out at its natural temperature. But yeah, so you kind of bathe in there for a little bit, and you come out, you take a shower again, clean yourself off, and then yeah, put your clothes back on, and you're good to go. But yeah, so I've been really enjoying that, and I thought that having that in addition to kind of sand bathing was a really cool experience. So highly recommend it. Another fun thing we did is going to Sakurajima. Sakurajima is an active volcano that is a 15-minute ferry ride from Kagoshima City. So my friends and I, we took our rental car, packed some stuff, and we went ahead and explored kind of the area right at the base of Sakurajima. I went on a couple nice walks over there. Sakurajima is great. I think it's a nice contrast to Kagoshima, where the city is still in sight, and Kagoshima City is kind of, I'd say, like a medium to big-ish city. And so when you're in the city, it's kind of noisy, but even just a 15-minute ferry ride, and you're at Sakurajima, and it is very serene, very peaceful and quiet. It's great scenery as well. You also have a bunch of like lava rocks, so I thought it was really cool. Also, if you're in Kagoshima, again, Sakurajima is another place that I recommend. Finally, we also hit up the local aquarium. It has, I think it's like Ayo World Aquarium. I'm not sure if it's like world famous or not, or whether that's just the name. But in any case, I had a fun time. I don't think I've gone to an aquarium in quite some time, so got to feel a little younger again, which is fun. I'd say one of my friends was saying that they did not like the dolphin show that much, but personally, we ended up watching the dolphin show about like 20 minutes long, and I thought it was good fun. I think dolphins are great animals, very smart animals, and just kind of watching them perform and do tricks, I thought it was a cool experience. What surprised me the most was how high these animals can jump out of water. Like it's quite astonishing. I'd say they can get up to like a good 4 or 5 meters out of the water, at least based off of what I saw. So that was that was kind of shocking, and I had fun. Another fun part of the aquarium was they had this kind of dark room with this quiet and I don't know what kind of ambiance, but it was a good ambiance. And inside this big tank, they had a bunch of fish swimming around, and it was like this really big tank that you could kind of walk up to. It's a whale shark in there. Yeah, and it was just a really cool vibe. My friends and I really enjoyed it a lot. So those are kind of the big attractions that we went to. I would say that if you're in Kagoshima, then hopping down to Ibuski is worth it for the hot springs. Going to Sakurajima, very worth it. It's literally a 15-minute ferry ride, and the ferry is very inexpensive, especially if you don't take a car. And the aquarium, I think that is one of kind of Kagoshima's more famous things, is the aquarium, so I also recommend giving it a visit. Yeah, I think my friends and I, we had good fun going to all those places. One place that was kind of unexpected for me, but I had a lot of fun at, was the arcade. So my friends and I went to the arcade a couple of times, and we just played with some claw machines. The claw machines were a lot of fun. I feel like going to the arcade alone and just putting 100 yen after 100 yen into claw machines is a little bit depressing, but I had a lot of fun going with friends. I think kind of changed my view on the arcade and claw machines in general, instead of like, oh, it's a scam that's set up to kind of make you lose money. It's like, if you're going with friends and you're just having some banter, then I think it's a really fun place. And they are kind of I feel like there's a lot of arcades, at least what I've seen throughout Japan. So I think it's a fun activity. Like I said, I wouldn't go by myself, but I think just going with a group, yeah, it was good fun. And we actually ended up winning some stuff from the claw machines as well. So now I got a random Pokemon. I don't even know its name, but I'm just happy that I won something. The final thing I wanted to talk about in this section was this sushi restaurant that we went to. First, I wanted to describe kind of the experience that I had, and then just kind of some general tips and recommendations that I have, like if you're planning on visiting a kind of a high-end sushi restaurant in Japan. In any case, to start off with my experience, this restaurant was called, I think, Iwasaki Sushi, kind of in downtown Kagoshima, and hands down, like very easily, front runner, best sushi that I've ever had. And I feel like I've definitely had it. I feel like I've had it in Europe, definitely had it in America, and I've had some sushi here in Japan as well. But this was kind of like a sushi specialty establishment, and it was a kind of a higher end sushi restaurant. And so my friends and I went our last evening, and yeah, no, the food was absolutely amazing. The three of us, each got the kind of omakase plate. Omakase means like chef's choice, dealer's choice, and so it's a little bit more expensive, but I think it's really cool because basically you get to watch this sushi chef perform their art, their culinary art, and you get to kind of partake in it by eating it at the end instead of like ordering off of a menu. You kind of get presented with the art that the chef makes. It's a little bit loss of autonomy. You don't get to kind of pick and choose exactly what you want, but I enjoyed that it was kind of random. Like the sushi chef would kind of put out pieces of sushi one after the other and tell us whether we could dip it in soy sauce or not. And each piece was different, and I was always kind of looking forward to, what's the next one going to be. It was also incredibly fresh, fresh to the point of one of the shrimp-like creatures that we had the sushi with. It was literally like, I think, killed, or yeah, it was killed 15 seconds prior to us or the sushi chef kind of preparing it. So when we got it set on our plate, the tail of that creature was still kind of wobbling about and whatnot. So I don't know how I feel about that. It was kind of moving around a little bit in my mouth as well. But I mean, it's a cool experience. So yeah, and it still tasted great. This was, like I mentioned, this was kind of a nice sushi restaurant, so it was on the pricier end. And I think if you get omakase, so like the dealer's choice, it is a little bit pricier. Instead, I mean, that's like you're paying someone to, do their art. Is kind of how I would explain the price increase from like omakase to like just like something that you order off of the menu. In any case, I want to also talk a little bit about some sushi etiquette that I learned partially while I was at the restaurant, and just kind of, I thought it would be important or cool to share with you all. One thing that you should not do at a sushi restaurant is adjust the omakase. So my friends did have like some things that they disliked quite a lot, that they asked like the chef. So, hey, we're gonna order the omakase, but please leave like, I think, like eel, unagi out of it. And so that was fine. Like the chef obliged, but generally, if you're ordering, the omakase plate, you should not be telling the chef like, adjust this, adjust that. Like, no, the whole point is like they get to kind of do their own thing, and so you really shouldn't interfere in it unless you like need to. Obviously, if you have like an allergy or some dietary restriction, then definitely let them know. But yeah, just as a general rule of thumb, try not to adjust the omakase. Also, this is something that my friends told me, is that the hand that you're not using to eat with, so the hand that's not holding chopsticks, should remain on the table at all times. Just kind of palm flat, face down. Not sure the exact reason for this, but I guess it's a thing. And so, yeah, if you want to have perfect table manners at the restaurant, then yeah, there you go. Also, one thing that you should do is use a conservative amount of soy sauce. This is so you don't spill. It's also so that you don't kind of completely drown out the taste of the sushi and replace it with soy sauce taste. And you want to be clean and orderly, and just putting out a bunch of soy sauce into this little plate that they give you. Yeah, not a good look and not conducive to eating in a cleanly manner. Also, the soy sauce can be expensive, and if you pour a bunch out and you have a bunch left over at the end, that's like going to be wasted. So it's better just be conservative with it. Just pour a little bit. If you run out, pour a little bit more. Another thing that you should know if you're visiting a sushi restaurant, you will receive a hand towel at the beginning and at the end. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's some restaurants that only give one towel, but at the restaurant we were at, we received a cold hand towel in the beginning and a hot hand towel at the end. These are not napkins, so don't really, at least I don't think so. I wouldn't treat them as such, and they're mostly for your hands to kind of clean them off. And also don't just kind of crumple them up and throw them to the side once you're done. There should be a little like holder for you to kind of roll the little hand towel back up and put it on. And yeah, if you get like soy sauce on your hand or something, you just kind of it should be next to you while you're eating. Another thing that I thought, or my friends kind of informed me, is that you should talk to the sushi chef at least a little bit while you're eating. So, like coming from America or living mostly in the U.S., you don't really talk to the chef or even like your server. Really, you just kind of sit down and talk amongst your friends. But I think the way that it's set up here, it's actually encouraged for you to make conversation with the sushi chef while he's preparing your food, and then there's going to be a little interval when he's done preparing all the things, but you're still eating a little bit during that time. Do make conversation with the chef. Just kind of tell them, like, if you're coming from overseas, then like, oh, this is where I'm from. Kind of don't ask like personal questions. They generally frown upon that in Japan, I think in most places. But yeah, if you can find a way to converse with them, I think it's a good look. And finally, I think many people know this already, but you're going to have a stack of pickled ginger or ginger on the side, and you should be eating a little slice of ginger between each piece of sushi. It's to cleanse your palate, basically to get the full flavor of the next bite. And I did it and I recommend it. I think it works. It can be a little tedious sometimes. You already have the next piece of sushi that the chef put out on your plate. You're like, oh, I want to eat. But if you want the full experience, eat those little pieces of pickled ginger, clean the palate, and then you get to have a really cool sushi experience. So yeah. In any case, that was my little Kagoshima experience. I hope you all enjoyed listening to it. Let's cut to the current events section. The current events section for this week will be about the Japanese economy. And so the inspiration for this is I was browsing Instagram, as one does, and I've come across a couple of videos at this point of some Japanese people complaining about the Japanese economy not being the best or being in a bad state. And in particular, one video was saying, oh my gosh, look at these happy tourists riding around Tokyo in go-karts. Meanwhile, my economy is bad, boo-hoo. And so that got me thinking, well, I have an economics degree, so let's investigate. How is Japan's economy actually performing? So let's start with the good. So the good is that Japan's economy grew at an annualized rate of 6% in the second quarter of 2023. This was measured in GDP, and GDP is one of the kind of best indicators of how an economy is doing. 6% is quite high for growth in terms of GDP, annualized growth. In fact, it was double what expectations had predicted. And this kind of 6% boost or growth was powered by a weak currency, which meant that exports increased. So if the yen is weak, it means that the dollar can buy more yen. For example, if $1 used to be worth 100 yen, if the yen weakens, it means that $1 can now buy 150 yen, which is great for people that are overseas who want to buy Japanese goods that are priced in yen. For example, if there's an apple produced in Japan, costs 100 yen, Well, before the currency weekend, with $1, I could buy one apple. But suppose now that $1 is worth 150 yen, then I can buy 1.5, one and a half 100 yen apples. So Japanese exports increased. That contributed to the growth, and also tourism, which kind of I briefly mentioned the tourists riding around in go-karts, but tourism rebounded to 70% of pre-pandemic levels. So getting back up there. Tourism definitely boosts the economy, so that's kind of a good thing for Japan that the tourism sector is recovering. And it looks like the tourism sector is only going to continue to recover because China recently lifted a group travel ban that it had, and Japan is a popular destination for Chinese tourists. So maybe Japan is on the way to getting back to 100% of pre-pandemic tourism levels. So hopefully it gets there. Also, I do want to note that real GDP in Japan is finally back to pre-pandemic terms. So I mentioned that annualized GDP, or Japan grew at an annualized rate of 6% in the second quarter of 2023. So that's nominal GDP. And real GDP, nominal GDP, what you have to remember is the real GDP is looking at GDP but accounting for inflation as well. And inflation has been quite high. So even though GDP might be growing, it might not be growing faster than inflation. In any case, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of this economic principle right now, but just important to remember that real and nominal GDP are different, and their difference is that real accounts for inflation. I do want to talk a little bit about the bad. I want to quote Stefan Angrick, who's a senior economist at Moody's Analytics in Japan, from a New York Times article, who said that there are question marks everywhere. And the reason for that is that right now Japan is in a domestic spending slump. So because Japan's currency is weak, it's great for exporters, great for foreigners who want to buy Japanese goods, but it's also bad, or not also bad, but it's bad for Japan's domestic sector, or people living in Japan, because the weak yen, it pushes up the price. If we're looking at the Apple example, but reverse it, and we're talking about apples that are priced in US dollars, suddenly those apples have become more expensive. And Japan depends a lot on the global economy, and it buys a lot of things from overseas, like energy and just food. And so if those prices are increasing due to a weak currency, that's kind of bad for the domestic economy. This, coupled with inflation, which again is supported by a weak yen, has also contributed to the domestic spending slump. This domestic spending slump is evidenced by a fall in private consumption. So private consumption being just household spending and whatnot, what private individuals spend, and which is a big chunk of the Japanese economy. And so if that is falling, it's not a good sign, essentially. And so I do have one more section say about that I called the ugly. I got the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's nothing too ugly yet, but the problem is that Japan, like I mentioned, is very connected with the international market. Japan is the world's largest creditor, so someone who is owed money, and is also a big debtor as well. And so what that means is that when there are world problems, or when one country or the international market is doing well, Japan is doing well. When the international market is doing poorly, that means Japan is also going to be kind of adversely affected. And for example, Japan's largest trading partner, China, is having its own economic problems. Right now, China is facing kind of an economic downturn that is due to kind of problems that arose in their housing market. And so if your biggest trading partner is facing an economic downturn, it does not spell good times for you. Additionally, Europe has been cooling as well a little bit. Cooling meaning that their economy isn't too hot. It's kind of on a downward trend. And so because Japan is so linked with the global economy, if one part of the world isn't doing well, then, it's going to kind of show up and affect Japan as well. But hopefully they keep Japan kind of keeps trudging along. They're still the world's third largest economy, so they're in a good spot, I think, behind U.S. and China. Unless the ugly actually gets ugly, I don't think there's really a cause for large concern yet. But yeah, so overall, if I had to respond to those Instagram videos out there, I would say that yes, some goods are increasing in price, and it is a little bit harder for the average Japanese citizen or resident, but overall, the economy isn't doing too poorly, and so yeah, hopefully no crashes, knock on wood, because that would be bad for everyone. In any case, let's cut to the closing section. Thank you to everyone who's made it this far into the show. Now it's time for your word and stat of the week. So the word of the week is mujoka, which means cute. Some people might know it as kawaii. This is a little bit of Tanegashima Ben, or part of the Tanegashima dialect. Mujoka is just another way to say cute. The reason I had a little bit of the Tanegashima dialect, Taneben, for this week's word is because my friends who I was in Kagoshima with this week, who speak good Japanese, were telling me that they were having a little bit of difficulty understanding the way that some people were speaking to them in Kagoshima City, which I found quite amusing. I don't think it was because people were using mujoka, but it's just one example of the Tanegashima or even Kagoshima dialect. Your stat of the week is 149.22. This is the current, as of Sunday, the current exchange rate for yen to dollar, or I should say for $1 you can get 149.22 yen right now. This is one of the highest it's been. I think earlier this year it peaked at 150 as well, but it kind of went back down to upper 130s, low 140s. But recently, like I mentioned in the current events section, it's the yen has been kind of weakening, and it's gotten back up, or it's in terms of the dollar has gotten back up to being worth about 149.22, or almost 150 yen per dollar. I also want to give you all a quick update. I don't think there will be an episode next week. This is episode 10, so I'm going to have a little mid-season break. I'm also in the middle of reapplying to some law schools right now, so a little busy. I might put something out, might not be a full episode, but looking like a break for next week, at least not an ordinary episode. Mid-season break. I will be back the week after that with episode 11. I'm thinking about 10 episodes per half season and 20 episodes per season. It's looking like realistic for me. But I'll just keep making new episodes from next week on. So until then, peace and love, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. This is your host, Martin, clocking out.